Tom Monroe thought retirement would mean porch coffee, crossword puzzles, and peace. That was before he found a bright orange HOA citation taped to his freshly painted mailbox, with his name spelled Monroe. The air was crisp that morning, the kind that made you pull your sleeves down but still welcome the sun on your face. Tom had stepped out just before 7, mug in hand, ready for his usual porch ritual. The coffee was still steaming, his crossword puzzle already folded to today's date, and the street, Maple Hollow Lane, lay as quiet and neatly trimmed as ever. He waved to old Mr. Fields walking his dachshund in a slow, practiced rhythm. Then his eyes caught the splash of orange. At first, he thought it might have been a kid's prank, but as he approached the mailbox, the neatly typed citation dispelled that theory. The language was formal, clipped, violation number 1, improper hedge conformity. Please reference section 14B of the Community Maintenance Code. He blinked at the signature, sincerely, the Maple Hollow Homeowners Association. No name. Just the HOA. As if the HOA were a person who tucked in their shirt too tight and walked like a ruler. Tom squinted at the paper again. Monroe. Not Monroe. He chuckled dryly and muttered, "At least get my name right if you're going to scold me." Later that morning, he found himself at the corner diner, where locals knew the waitress by name and no one had to ask for refills. He sat at the booth by the window, same as always. Frankie Daniels slid in across from him, a man with a thick mustache and a habit of scratching his chin before he spoke. "Got your first one?" Frankie asked, nodding toward the bright sheet poking out of Tom's shirt pocket. "You mean they hand these out like bingo cards?" Tom raised a brow. Frankie chuckled and reached for the cream. "Pretty much. I got mine last summer. Didn't edge my flower bed correctly." He stirred his coffee lazily. "It's Karen. She's real big on uniformity." "I haven't even met her," Tom said. "Only thing I've gotten from her is a typo and a lecture about hedge geometry." Frankie shrugged. "That's how she likes it. Paper talks more than she does." Back home, Eli was already scrolling through his tablet when Tom walked in. "Hey, Dad. Get a ticket or something?" Eli asked, eyeing the orange paper still folded in Tom's hand. Tom handed it over. Eli read it in silence, then smirked. "Improper hedge conformity? That's a new one. I told you last week I'd mow when it actually needed it. Guess I missed the psychic deadline." Eli tapped a few keys and pulled up a downloadable HOA PDF. "This thing's like 80 pages. There's a rule about the angle of house numbers from the curb." "That can't be enforced," Tom said, but Eli just raised a brow. A minute later, Eli pulled out his phone, took a photo of the notice, and added it to a folder labeled Weird Stuff HOA. Tom peered at the name and gave a small nod of approval. "You think they're serious?" Eli asked. "I think they're thorough," Tom replied. "Which can be worse?" That afternoon, as Tom stepped outside to retrieve a package, he spotted Mrs. Kincaid across the street, packing a trunk. 2 boxes already sat in the back seat. Her house had only been on the market for a few weeks. Now, she was leaving. Frankie's voice echoed in his head from earlier, maybe they just didn't want the fight. Tom wandered back inside, the breeze tugging at the edge of the citation he had pinned with a magnet to the fridge. It fluttered slightly as he opened the door to the garage. The space was as tidy as ever. Rake on the hook, bags of mulch stacked neatly in the corner. He'd left the door open the night before while fiddling with a stubborn light timer, forgetting to close it right away. Now, nestled between the morning mail and a coupon for auto parts, was another paper, this one folded lengthwise. He opened it slowly, already guessing the color and font. Violation number 2, garage door remained open beyond acceptable sundown grace period, 12 minutes. See section 11G. He stared at it for a long moment, the edge of the paper curling like it couldn't wait to wrinkle. Tom folded the letter carefully and said, "Let's keep every one of these. Just in case." It wasn't the clipboard or the orange vest that bothered Eli. It was the earpiece, the way the man paused like he was waiting for permission to keep walking. The sidewalk still held on to the warmth of the day, though the air had shifted. Evening in Maple Hollow brought a hush over everything. Porch lights blinked on one by one. A wind chime somewhere up the block played a soft tune no one really knew but everyone had heard. Tom stood at the edge of the lawn, garden hose in hand, carefully aiming the stream toward the base of the rose bush that hadn't quite given up for the season. Beside him, Eli was balanced on the porch rail, fiddling with a loose bulb on the light fixture. They both noticed the figure at the same time. Mid-30s, tall, moving slow like someone doing a perimeter check. Clipboard in hand, vest bright enough to catch headlights, and a small walkie-talkie at his shoulder. The man stopped every few houses, occasionally making a mark with a pen. He didn't look around. Just observed, and moved. Tom straightened slightly. "Evening," he called out, polite but direct. The man paused. "Routine HOA safety visual check," he replied, then tapped something on the clipboard and kept walking. Eli watched him go. "He didn't even look at you when he said that." Tom turned off the hose and walked up the steps. He didn't need to. He already had his line rehearsed. Inside, Eli pulled the doorbell footage from the last hour and played it back on his laptop. He slowed the frame when the man passed by. With a few taps, he zoomed in on the shoulder patch. The words were there, clear as day, Maple Hollow Safety Enforcement. "That's not a real group," Eli said flatly. "You sure?" Tom asked, setting down his glass of water and looking over his shoulder. Eli opened the HOA handbook PDF he'd saved last week. He scrolled, scanned, searched. "There's a safety subcommittee," he said, "but it's just for planning street lamp maintenance and sidewalk snow removal." "No patrols?" Tom asked. "Not unless we're expecting a blizzard in Arizona." A knock at the door interrupted them. Eli looked up as Tom answered. It was the Shaws, Harold and May, both in their late 60s, always kind, always a little tentative like they didn't want to intrude even when invited. May held out a glass dish wrapped in foil. "We had some extra cherry pie. Thought Eli might like a slice." "Thank you," Tom said, stepping aside. "Come in, just for a minute." They didn't remove their coats, just shuffled in far enough to stand near the entryway. After a few pleasantries, "How's the school year, how's the knee holding up?" May leaned in a little. "We got one of those letters last week," she said softly. Tom tilted his head. "Citation?" "For the Halloween lights," Harold explained. "Said we left them up 2 days too long." "They were pumpkins," May added, her voice tight. "Not even blinking." Eli exchanged a glance with Tom. Something unspoken moved between them. "They're watching us," Eli muttered under his breath once the door closed behind the Shaws. Tom returned to his seat, pulled the orange envelopes from the kitchen drawer. The font, the phrasing, it was all the same. The only variation was the violation listed. "They must have a list," he said. "Track who they've warned and when." Eli nodded, already clicking through HOA flyers posted at the clubhouse site. He found the same patrol vest in a background photo, standing near a table of lemonade and pamphlets. No name listed. Later that night, the stillness returned, but it wasn't comforting. It was too neat. Like someone had arranged the quiet on purpose. Eli stood at the front window, watching the street. A few porch lights were on. A couple across the cul-de-sac sat on rocking chairs, silhouettes against the flicker of a football game on their TV. A dog barked once, then stopped. Then the Monroe porch light flickered. Twice. Eli stepped back instinctively. Tom, reading at the kitchen table, looked up just as Eli reached the front door. Taped to the mailbox was another letter. Eli peeled it off and read aloud, "Violation number 3, excessive decorative lighting." He turned to his father, eyebrows raised. "It's a 75-watt bulb," he said. Tom didn't say anything, just took the letter and added it to the folder they'd started. "Eli, this isn't about safety. It's about control." 3 hard knocks broke the night like a snapped twig in a forest. Tom opened his eyes without sitting up. He already knew something was wrong. The room was still, except for the slow red blink of the digital clock beside his bed. 3:02 a.m. The kind of hour where even the neighborhood cats had gone quiet. Outside, the wind dragged a few dry leaves across the driveway, whispering against the concrete like paper over stone. Tom waited, his breathing measured. A week before, he'd told Eli half-jokingly, "Sleep with your phone on. Not everything knocks twice." At the time, it was more habit than advice. Tonight, it echoed back to him with eerie precision. He sat up and slipped out of bed in one motion, bare feet landing silently on the carpet. The second knock didn't come. Instead, a soft, irregular thump, not far from the back gate. Not a knock. A shift. A wait. He crossed the room without turning on a light and opened the door. In the hallway, Eli was already there, clutching his phone, his socked feet pressed into the hardwood. "There at the side door," he whispered. Tom's face didn't move, but his eyes sharpened. "How many?" "I saw 3. I think one's at the gate, one's at the patio. I don't know where the third is." Tom nodded once. "Stay upstairs," he said, voice low but unshaken. "Lights off. Stay low." Eli hesitated. "They have those vests. The orange ones. Same kind as before." Tom didn't respond right away. He moved toward the landing that overlooked the living room, keeping in the shadow line along the wall. From there, he could hear it more clearly, faint crunching of mulch, the metallic whine of a latch being tested, then a whisper. "Ready?" Another voice replied, lower, muffled. Then the soft rattle of the patio door handle. Tom lowered himself into a crouch just beyond the stair rail, pulled out his phone, and dialed. When the dispatcher picked up, he kept it short. 3 men outside my home. Not police. Reflective vests. Possibly impersonating HOA. Are they attempting entry, sir? One is. The other 2 are circling. Address is 219 East Willow, Maple Hollow. Front lights are off. Police are en route. Stay on the line." Tom ended the call. Below, a flashlight beam swept across the side fence. One of the men moved toward the patio again, this time more deliberately. The glass shimmered as he pressed a gloved hand against it, leaning in. Tom didn't flinch. He stayed just inside the shadow cast by the stairwell wall, motionless. His breathing was steady, controlled. He had stood in rooms far more dangerous than this one, in countries where warnings didn't come with orange paper. The man on the patio reached for the handle again, pushed down, and the door clicked. Not open, but unlocked. Someone had forgotten to latch it fully. The door shifted half an inch inward. A shape moved behind the curtain. The intruder froze. Inside, Tom stepped just slightly forward, enough that his silhouette appeared through the glass. Just enough. The man's eyes met Tom's. There was no sound. No yelling. No threats. Then, without a word, the man turned and bolted. His footsteps pounded the deck, shoes slipping on dew-slicked boards. Another figure darted from the side yard, disappearing into the neighbor's bushes. Tom waited. 3 minutes later, red and blue lights washed over the windows. The quiet snapped under the weight of car doors, rapid steps on pavement, voices rising in sharp instruction. Tom opened the front door calmly, hands visible, shoulders square. "I'm the homeowner," he said clearly. Intruders fled east on foot. No entry made. I stayed inside. The officer nodded. "Any weapons?" "No," Tom said. "Not tonight." One officer moved around back, flashlight sweeping over shrubs and corners. Another joined him with AK-9. Tom didn't follow. He stood on the porch, watching the patterns of flashlight arcs dance across lawns and fences. He didn't look down until one officer returned, holding a crowbar wrapped in a plastic evidence sleeve. "Found it near the deck," the officer said. Tom nodded once. Inside, Eli sat on the stairs, arms resting on his knees, face pale but steady. Tom joined him quietly. They ran. They did, Tom said. There was a pause. Then Eli's voice came, low and certain. Dad, they had HOA patches. Just like the guy last night. Tom mowed the lawn that morning, not because it needed trimming, but because the HOA guidelines said, no taller than 3.5 inches, and his tape measure said 3.51. The blades whirred in even, methodical rows as Tom pushed the mower slowly along the edge of the yard. He paused once every few passes to check the height again, not because he doubted himself, but because he knew someone else might. With a small notepad tucked into the back pocket of his jeans, he logged the time, temperature, and height of each trimmed section. The notebook cover read in tidy block letters, Karen's checklist. It had started as a joke, but now Tom treated it with the same discipline he once reserved for his field training logs. If they wanted precision, he would give them precision, down to the quarter inch. Eli leaned against the porch railing, phone in hand, snapping pictures at each stage. I still can't believe we're logging hedge height like it's a science experiment. Tom glanced over his shoulder. It is, apparently. You really think this helps? Tom straightened up, wiped the sweat from his brow, and said, You remember what you asked me last week? Why follow rules made to trap people? Eli nodded. Because that's how you trap the trap, Tom said. You document everything. You don't give them anything they can twist. Later that afternoon, Tom stood beside the mailbox with a can of regulation-compliant paint, Maple Hollow Beige No. 42. He applied a second coat, even though the first had dried smooth. A neighbor 2 houses down gave him a wave. Another, across the street, lifted a mug and said, Don't envy you, Tom. But it looks sharp. Tom nodded in reply, then snapped a photo with the timestamp visible in the corner. Inside, Eli pulled up the HOA handbook on his laptop again, highlighting clauses that dealt with mailbox maintenance, irrigation schedules, and flagpole etiquette. Each line was absurdly specific. Section 9C, front-facing flags must be flown no lower than 5 feet 6 inches from the base and may not be tattered beyond 1/16 inch along the edge. Tom glanced over his son's shoulder. Print that. We'll need it when someone asks why we're measuring our welcome mat. By mid-afternoon, a knock came at the door. Karen Blake stood on the porch, wearing a crisp white blouse and a pastel blue scarf, clipboard tucked neatly against her side like it belonged there more than she did. Mr. Monroe, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, just doing a little round today, checking in after last week's incident. Tom returned the smile, matching her tone. Of course. Appreciate the personal attention. She glanced toward the mailbox. Lovely color. Very compliant. That was the goal. Karen tilted her head. I do hope this recent tension doesn't affect your view of the HOA. We're here to keep things orderly. Tom nodded. Order's nice. So is fairness. She looked past him, into the house, then back again. You know, sometimes when people push too hard, they discover why the rules are in place. He raised an eyebrow. And sometimes when people push back, they discover the rules aren't being followed at all. Karen's smile faded a fraction. Well. Enjoy the rest of your day. As she walked away, Eli, watching from the window, noticed something odd. She didn't take the sidewalk. She cut across the corner of the Hendersons' yard, then through the White's flower bed before stepping back onto the path near the curb. She just walked across 3 properties like they were hers, Eli muttered. Record it, Tom said. Time, direction, everything. That evening, Tom visited Frankie's place. The older man greeted him with a lopsided grin and 2 mugs of tea. After a few minutes of quiet talk on the porch, Frankie disappeared inside and came back with a worn folder, HOA minutes from the last 5 years. Had a feeling you'd want these, Frankie said, handing it over. Tom flipped through it. Meetings cancelled without notice. Quorum numbers scratched out and replaced. One section marked Emergency Discretionary Action, approved by chair only. She's not used to anyone pushing back, Frankie added. And she really doesn't like when people take notes. Back at home, Tom sorted the day's documentation, a full-color photo log of yard work, PDF copies of bylaws, and a receipt for mulch that matched HOA-approved supplier standards. He filed them all. The next morning, he stepped outside to retrieve the paper and found something else in the mailbox. A new letter. He opened it slowly, expecting another strange claim. He wasn't disappointed. Violation number 4, over-irrigation detected on front lawn. He looked at the sky. It had rained the night before. Tom laughed, short and dry. They must think I control the clouds. That evening, Frankie dropped by with a neutral expression and an envelope in hand. He didn't say much at first. Just nodded toward Eli and said, "I think you need to see this," and handed him a USB drive. The folder names were unsettling enough: Sherwood, Observe, Pemberton, Flagged, Monroe, Active. Eli scrolled slowly, the USB drive's contents blooming across the screen in neatly labeled directories. Each one was named after a house on their street. It looked more like military surveillance than anything a suburban HOA should be handling. He didn't say anything at first. He just stared, his jaw tightening. Tom sat beside him, silent. The lamp by the couch cast a soft glow over the living room. Outside, wind teased the porch chimes into a slow lull. Inside, only the quiet tapping of the keyboard broke the stillness. "Here," Eli said finally. "This was taken 4 nights ago." He clicked on a file labeled Monroe, East Angle Cam 2. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. A figure walked past their backyard fence, paused at the motion light, then moved away. The timestamp matched exactly with the night Eli had glanced out the window and thought he saw something shift. "They've been watching," he murmured. "This wasn't just the patrol guy." Tom leaned forward. "Zoom in." Eli did. The camera wasn't theirs. The angle was too high, too specific. It had to be mounted on a pole, or a tree across the street. Eli clicked open another folder. This one had stills. Screenshots. Notes. One said, "Garage left open, 12 minutes 34 SEC." Another, "Teen male, observed after 10 p.m." He clicked again, and a new document opened. It was an invoice, Consulting and Surveillance Services, Blackfield Security. Paid in full. HOA listed as the client. And just beneath the line item, a note, Primary Contact, K. Blake. Eli's voice was quiet. "It's a private firm." Tom squinted. "Blackfield. That's the same last name as her cousin," Eli confirmed, already pulling up LinkedIn profiles. "Jeremy Blake. Owner of the firm. Based in Tucson." Tom didn't reply. He stood and walked slowly to the bookshelf, pulled out a slim binder labeled Maple Hollow Municipal Code, a printout he'd made back when he first moved in. He flipped to a section he'd bookmarked, Private Surveillance and Consent. He read aloud, "It is unlawful to install monitoring equipment directed at private property without owner's knowledge and written permission." "They broke the law," Eli said. "More than once." "No," Tom corrected gently. "They broke trust. The law just confirms it." They kept going. Each folder was worse than the last. Footage of porches, people raking leaves, taking in groceries, talking on phones. All normal things, except they were captured without consent, stored, labeled, archived. Near the bottom of the file tree, Eli spotted an icon he hadn't opened. A folder labeled Audio. He hesitated, then clicked. Inside, a single file, meeting_KB_OCT20.mp3. Eli looked to Tom. He nodded once. The recording crackled to life. Karen's voice came through, calm and composed. "We can't rely on people to report things anymore. We have to document behavior. And if they push back? Well," a pause. Then, softly, "You don't like it?" Maybe you should find a new neighborhood. Eli stopped the audio. Tom said nothing for a long moment. Then he walked to the dining table, pulled out a blank folder, and opened his laptop. He began typing, "Community hearing request, November 23rd. We'll need statements," he said. "I'll start printing," Eli replied. An hour later, the binder was half full. Eli labeled it "not so safe," slid it into his backpack, and leaned back in the chair. The next morning, the sky over Maple Hollow was streaked with faint pink. Dew lined the mailbox as Tom approached the bulletin board at the clubhouse. He peeled the backing off a flyer he'd printed the night before and pressed it flat against the cork. Community hearing, November 23rd, all residents invited. By 5:45 p.m., every folding chair in the Maple Hollow clubhouse was filled, and a few folks brought their own. The room hummed with soft conversation, the clink of casserole lids and the occasional squeak of a metal chair adjusting under weight. Someone had set out a crockpot of chili on the back table. Next to it, a platter of deviled eggs with little flags poked into each half. Mrs. Walters brought her lemonade, the one with too much sugar and exactly the right amount of nostalgia. Most had come out of curiosity. Others, out of a quiet sense that something had been wrong for a long time, but no one had known quite how to say it. Until now. Tom sat at the front beside a collapsible card table, hands folded, not looking at anyone in particular. He wasn't a man for speeches, but he didn't need one tonight. "This isn't about grass or garbage bins," he said calmly, voice low but clear. "It's about trust." A few heads nodded. The buzz quieted. Eli stood beside a small projector, his laptop open and connected to the clubhouse's old pull-down screen. He clicked once. A grainy image appeared, a still frame of their porch, taken from across the street. The words, "Monroe, East Angle Cam 2, hovered in the corner. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "This," Eli said, "wasn't from our doorbell. It wasn't ours at all." He clicked again. A zoomed-in invoice filled the screen. Blackfield Security. Contracted by Maple Hollow HOA. Payments approved over 6 months, no member-wide vote. The owner of the firm, Eli looked up, is Karen Blake's cousin. There was a shuffle of movement, like collective discomfort. In the back, someone whispered, "What?" Karen stood, arms crossed, still in her tailored slacks and scarf, a folder clutched in one hand. "That's taken out of context." "You'll get a chance to respond," Tom said evenly, without looking at her. The next slide showed camera placements overlaid on a map of the neighborhood. Red dots marked trees, lamp posts, even rooftops. Eli's voice stayed calm. "Most of these don't belong to residents. No permissions. No disclosures." The room fell quiet. Then, from near the third row, a frail voice spoke up. "I got a letter last month. Said my wreath was political." It was Mrs. Shaw, standing now with both hands clutching her walker. "I got it right after I told Karen I wouldn't be donating to the beautification fund again. Funny how that worked." A low wave of murmuring rose. Karen's face stiffened. Frankie Daniels stood next. He held up a paper. "Emergency inspections. All signed by Karen alone. No meeting notes. No votes recorded." He tapped the paper. "I checked the dates. They were during weeks we didn't even meet." Someone from the back, Mr. Goldberg, Vietnam vet with a gentle drawl, asked, "You're saying she's been watching us?" "We're saying," Tom replied, "she's been running things like no one would ever ask." Eli clicked one final time. The recording played. Karen's voice filled the room, smooth and composed. "We can't rely on people to report things anymore. We have to document behavior. And if they push back? Well, you don't like it? Maybe you should find a new neighborhood." The silence afterward felt physical. Thick. Heavy. Karen's chair scraped loudly as she stood. "You're all ungrateful." Her voice cracked, high-pitched, defensive. "I made this place livable." A long pause. Then Tom, You made it fearful. Karen clutched a manila folder in one hand, her voice cracking, "This is slander, and you all know it." No one moved. The warm yellow overhead lights gave the clubhouse a cozy glow, but the air inside was tense, hushed. Papers rustled like dry leaves. Someone coughed softly. Others sat with arms folded, eyes narrowed not in anger, but in disbelief. Not long ago, this same room had hosted bingo nights and garden club meetings. Now, it was the setting of something far heavier, something long overdue. Karen stood near the front, back straight, shoulders taut. Her mouth twisted as she searched for the right words, but none seemed to land. Those surveillance invoices, they were misfiled. Reallocation is common in operations. And the inspections, those were verbal approvals. Necessary ones. Tom sat across from her, silent, elbows resting lightly on the table. He didn't need to refute anything. The weight of evidence already spoken hung in the room like thick fog. Beside him, Eli's expression was unreadable. Calm, but watchful. Ready, if needed, but not rushing. Karen waved a sheet of paper in the air, as if motion could replace clarity. "This is a witch hunt. You think I haven't sacrificed for this neighborhood? I made it what it is." No one responded. It was Mrs. Shaw who stood first. Her voice trembled, but not from fear. "You fine me for repainting my porch bench." Said the color was too whimsical. It was beige. There were a few nods in the back rows. Mr. Goldberg, normally silent, shifted in his chair. "You walked into my backyard without a word last spring. Said it was an evaluation. That's called trespassing where I'm from." Karen turned toward him, her voice high. "I had authority. The HOA empowers the chair to inspect." Frankie stood next, holding a printout. "Only with board approval," he said evenly. "And with 72-hour notice. Which, according to these logs, never happened. Not once." A rustle passed through the room, not anger, but a collective settling. The kind that comes when something that's been off-kilter begins to tilt back toward balance. "You're twisting everything," Karen snapped. "I gave you structure. Without me, there's no standard. No consistency. You want chaos." For a long second, no one spoke. Then Eli, still seated, spoke softly, just loud enough to carry. "We want fairness." His words hung longer than hers ever had. Karen blinked, startled. Her fingers tightened around the folder, but her shoulders dropped just slightly, as though the room had shifted and she was the only one leaning against the wrong wall. Frankie stepped forward. "Per Article 7, Section B of the Maple Hollow Charter," he said, "any board member may motion for removal of the HOA chair with a 2/3 resident majority." He looked around the room. "I motion." A hand went up. Then another. Slowly, like the beginning of a wave, palms lifted, tentative at first, then all at once. Dozens. Some high, some just barely above shoulder level, but enough. Far more than enough. Karen's breath caught. She looked from face to face, waiting for someone, anyone, to lower their hand. No one did. Her face flushed, lips pressing into a thin line. Then, in one swift motion, she turned and knocked over the lemonade table. Cups tumbled. A plastic ladle spun off the edge and clattered to the floor. She stormed toward the door. At the threshold, she turned back, eyes wide, voice shaking but not soft. "You'll regret this. Enjoy your weeds and petty potlucks." Tom placed the last string of lights on the porch railing. White, simple, soft glow, just enough to show they'd stayed. The wire clicked gently into place as he stepped back, thumbs hooked in his belt loops, surveying the front of the house. The bulbs blinked on one by one, not blinking or flashy, just warm, steady dots lining the edge of the wood, casting a soft halo onto the steps. They matched the mood of the day, quiet, certain, without need for spectacle. Inside, the smell of roasted turkey mingled with stovetop stuffing and whatever cinnamon thing Mrs. Kincaid was baking across the street. Maple Hollow in late November glowed with that golden hour sheen where even the shadows looked content. A light breeze carried the scent of smoke from one of the nearby fire pits, and somewhere down the block, someone was setting out extra folding chairs onto their lawn. The porch, once home to a slapped-on violation notice flapping in the wind, now held a round tin of cookies from Mrs. Bauer, chocolate chip, still warm. A small sticky note on the lid read, "For the porch light that never gave in." Out back, Eli tapped the final nail into the broken fence slat, nodding in quiet satisfaction. "It's sturdier than before," he said. Tom handed him a screwdriver. "So are we." The slat was the last bit of damage left from the long night that had changed everything. They could have replaced the whole section, but they didn't. They chose to fix what was cracked, not discard it, a quiet statement in its own way. Frankie strolled in through the gate, holding a foil-covered dish and a small envelope. "She left," he said simply. No speech. No letter. "The board hired an outside auditor this morning." "You were right, she reallocated thousands." Tom raised an eyebrow, but didn't gloat. Just a small nod, like he was confirming a theory he'd written down weeks ago. "I brought pie," Frankie added, lifting the dish. "And not because I had to." The neighborhood came alive slowly, like a sunrise. People emerged carrying Tupperware and crockpots, some wearing aprons, others still in flannel shirts. Tables lined the sidewalks. One had a faded paper turkey centerpiece, wings taped clumsily in place. A speaker sat on a lawn chair blasting Motown hits, and laughter, real, free, unguarded, began to fill the spaces that had once been so carefully measured. Eli laid out his stuffing next to Mrs. Shaw's sweet potato pie. She gave his arm a gentle squeeze. "You boys brought the neighborhood back," she said. Tom grilled thick slices of turkey breast over an open flame, flipping them with practiced ease. He didn't say much, but people stopped by to say thank you. Not dramatically. Just in passing. Like offering a second scoop of mashed potatoes or refilling a coffee cup, the kind of thanks that was lived more than spoken. As the sun dipped behind the rooftops, casting long golden shadows across the sidewalk, Eli pulled out his laptop and sat next to Tom on the porch. "I made something," he said, pulling up a folder. It was labeled Reclaim. Inside, documents, audio, pictures. Everything organized, time-stamped, cross-referenced. In case it ever starts again. Tom didn't look surprised. He didn't say, "Good work." He just nodded once, slow and certain, then nudged the laptop lid shut and handed Eli a soda from the cooler beside them. A knock came at the door. Tom rose and opened it. A young couple stood there, maybe late 20s, holding a casserole dish wrapped in foil. The woman looked nervous, the man offered a cautious smile. "Sorry," she said. "We just moved in on Maple Lane. We weren't sure if..." Tom smiled and extended a hand. "You're just in time." That evening, candles flickered in windows. Porch lights stayed on just a bit longer. Neighbors lingered by fire pits, swapping stories. Someone brought out an old guitar. Mr. Goldberg danced with his wife in socks on the driveway. Laughter rose, soft, free, ordinary. And for the first time in a long while, Maple Hollow felt exactly like a place worth defending. The soft glow of porch lights and the laughter of neighbors sharing pie spoke louder than any rulebook ever could. In a place once ruled by fear and silence, quiet resilience and simple kindness reclaimed the streets of Maple Hollow. When those meant to lead lose their way, it's often the steady hands of ordinary folks that guide a community back home. Like a porch light left burning through the longest night, even the smallest stand can outlast the darkest storm.